Welcome to the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. Here's your host, Jason A. Meiske.
Hello, Sample Chapter listeners. This is episode 235 of the show, and this is actually a very special episode because it's the first part of my new format with the show. So today, you are getting ready to hear an interview with a first-time author and longtime friend of the show, Ryan Morgan Miller. He's here today talking, well, we're talking about all kinds of stuff. Mainly, we're talking podcasting. We're talking about our love for Kurt Russell and stories of Kurt. But we're also going to be covering his debut novel, The Vain Curse, a hard-boiled comedy novel. And we're going to be hearing the story behind that, how he came about writing it, the feeling of a story, whenever you're writing it, and writing for self, the value of that. That and so much more. It's a really fantastic interview, and one I can't wait to get you over to. And like I said, this is a first time for the show because I'm going to be splitting things up. You're going to hear the interview this week, and then next week you're going to hear the actual reading. And so you're going to be hearing from the same author 2 weeks in a row. So the good thing is that means I'm getting back to a weekly episode of the show. So hopefully you enjoy this as much as I did during the interview. Meanwhile, I'm not going to take very much time. I just want to make sure that you go and visit my friends at Pop Goes the Culture Network, home to Actually, they have reduced their shows recently. They've consolidated some of them, so they are my one of my favorite ones, the Alamo Draft House, is now a part of Pop Goes the Culture podcast. And I think they've done that with a couple of shows now where they're having a hard time keeping it going, but one of the main hosts with all of that, Joey Mills, he crosses over into each of those shows. So now what they're going to be doing is giving people from each show a break, except for Joey apparently. And then Joey's going to bounce around each week and do a different show. So one week it'll be Pop Goes the Culture, the next week it'll be the Alamo Draft House, and then going from there. But still, yeah, if you hop on over to or click that link in the show notes for Pop Goes the Culture Network, you're going to find all the other shows that are there that are available to you. Also, don't forget to click that link in the show notes for Writer's Block Coffee. They have 3 delicious flavors. You can order one or order them all, or you can set it up on automatic shipping so that you never miss out on some delicious Writer's Block coffee when you're burning that candle at both ends and you haven't had much sleep. There's nothing that's going to pick you up quite like Writer's Block coffee. I also want to announce that this is actually the last day for it, but all throughout May, I have been doing a push-up challenge for charity. Uh, yeah, beginning May 1st, I was doing a St. Jude's 3,000 push-ups in May. And I've split it up by going 100 push-ups each day. And yeah, as of today that you're hearing this, May 30th, this will be my 30th day. My 3,000th push-up is happening today. I had a goal of $250. Currently, I'm sitting at $220. So if your heart leads you in that way and you feel like going over and checking out the link, then I'll make sure and attach that with the show as well. It's on Facebook, so you can go to Facebook, our Facebook page as well, and you'll find it there, and I'll make sure to share that. But anyway, it's been quite a journey, and I've learned a lot about myself doing 100 push-ups a day for a month. I don't know if I'll continue doing 100 a day because oh my gosh, that's no joke. But yeah, I think I may keep doing push-ups every day, just because I've discovered to be quite a workout, like a full body workout. And and actually going back to the charity part of it, if you are led to donate, I just thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who has donated. I'm just blown away. I didn't know if I'd get any kind of donations on it. I figured by the end of the month I'd put some money down and just to give something over, but to see that I've had as many donations as I've had, and I've gotten to this point where it's like, wow, I'm actually might reach my goal. That's pretty special. So anyway, so I'm gonna cut things off right there, I think. Cause yeah, I don't wanna have the episodes going very long anymore. I wanna take up less of your time so that way, I think it's gonna help lead people to wanting to push that play button when they see this. Like, oh, hey, look, it's only like 30 or 45 minutes, tops. And we'll see how this goes. So anyway, how about we get on over to that fantastic and fun conversation with my friend, Ryan Morgan Miller. Hello, Sample Chapter listeners. Hey, welcome to a very exciting show. Very exciting for me in particular with my guest today. Someone I've been following for several years now. Gosh, I don't know if I can even put a number to it, but we've been talking back and forth a little bit here and there and met each other through the podcasting and the old Project Entertainment Network. I'm sure if anybody out there has been following the show for a while, you remember those days. And yeah, my guest today is someone who, although I've never met in person, I think I can call him a friend. And it's Ryan Morgan Miller out of New Jersey, and he's here today to discuss his debut novel, The Vain Curse, a hard-boiled comedy novel. Ryan, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks for having me on, Jason. And yeah, I've been following your work for how long? It's got to be at least 5 years now. But
yeah, this is year 6 for me on the show.
Yeah, it's crazy how time flies. But
yeah, man. Well, so I mean, we'll just kind of go back in the Wayback Machine for a minute. I mean, we met. You were doing Your New Opinion at that time, and that was just wild.
Yeah, my old podcast. Yeah.
And I think you were doing that for about a year or something like that before I started. I started in 2018.
I just looked right beforehand.
Yeah.
We started back in 2015, actually.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. I can't believe I've been, podcasting for this long. Almost 9 years now.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's wild. Okay. Yeah, I had no idea because I remember going back and checking out a lot of the old episodes once I found the show and just laughing it up and of course listening to oh man, your buddy who would get angry.
my friend Mike, one of my best friends in the world.
Yes, listen to what you would say. Somebody would say to get him angry. That was always just podcast gold.
That's what everybody says about that show. That because it was set up in such a way that it was aggressive, and that's not usually who we are. Like me, Nick, and Mike at the time. Mm-hmm. The three of us that were doing it, we're not really that kind of like aggressive people. But thinking back on it, I've known Mike for, gosh, I gotta say like 30 years now, and it's always been that kind of friendship where we just know how to twist each other and get us worked up. So, but everybody that I've talked to, Mike's moments on Your New Opinion were always their favorite parts.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was hilarious. And I love that he still responds and calls in once in a while on the new show, which I'm a big fan of, the Russell Hustle podcast, which is still going and just getting into some of the, well, for everybody listening, it is exactly what you think. It's a Kurt Russell fan podcast, but I'm going to hand it over to you to explain what this is.
Yeah. So it's me, my friends, Nick, Tom, and Ben. We got tired of doing Your New Opinion. Just like I said, it was kind of aggressive and we wanted more of a fun show. So we decided on the Russell Hustle podcast, which is exactly what you said, Jason. It's a Kurt Russell fan cast. We're going through his filmography from, early on when he was a kid actor and a Disney actor. And we're just going through it, TV shows when we feel like it, were his movies, TV movies, whatever. But I think the real draw of the show is what we call the unofficial autobiography, and the joke that he's, Kurt Russell is the one telling us this biography that we, make up sort of. as we go on, where each one of us writes the biography for each episode. I think that's the real draw, because I love doing the research into it. I know it sounds crazy, but doing the research into Kurt Russell's life and then making up stories using that as the basis. I think I have a lot of fun doing that, because there's the small things. I know you've been listening. There's the small things here and there when you hear the when you hear the biography that we read on each episode. Most of the time there are like the little bits and pieces here and there that are truthful, that actually happened to Kurt Russell. And the fact that you sometimes can't tell what's real and what's not, I think that's the best draw of it. But yeah, then we get into, trivia and the discussions of the movies and everything. So I'm having a lot more fun with this podcast, The Russell Hustle.
Oh my gosh, I have a whole new respect for that part of it now, because I had no idea you guys actually researched the background, and you and I have chatted back and forth my thoughts of it, and I think you even mentioned it on the most recent episode that absolutely you guys have got to put these together in a book, and it could be like part 1, season 1 or whatever, and put them together, because it's parody, so you should be able to do it, but they're just damn hilarious.
Well, thank you. That's really what we're going for. The reason why we I've been doing these podcasts for almost 9 years now or whatever, and especially the Russell Hustle, the basic reason is I just like hanging out with my friends and watching movies or whatever. But it also gives us the chance to be creative on a bi-weekly basis now. And just the fact that you like it, that's enough for me. I don't really, it doesn't matter to me how many listeners we have or anything. I just like it. I just like having fun with it.
Oh man. Yeah, I have a blast with it. And because of your show, I like, one of the things I was looking forward to is like, I grew up with a lot of his stuff as well. And I remember Kurt as a kid with the Disney stuff and some of his old black and white things, being born in the early 70s like I was. So I remember seeing Kurt as a young kid in shows. But it's funny how I had a little bit of a Mandela effect, where I don't know, for decades, probably since I was a kid, I thought the old Disney movie, The Cat from Outer Space, I thought he voiced the cat. And I totally believed that. I told people that. I was just like, oh yeah, he was in that too. And I was looking forward to when that was going to be coming up. And I checked his biography one time just recently because of your show. I was like, yeah, that's got to be coming up pretty soon. And realized, oh, that's not Kurt Russell. That's somebody completely different. So, I mean, yeah, computer wore tennis shoes and world's strongest man, all that kind of stuff. I was cracking up. And oh my gosh, the car little thing.
Oh, yeah.
And
I can't remember the name of that one, but
until you guys described that little animated short with the paint going across the car, I totally had an out-of-body experience when I heard you guys describing that. Because I had no idea what you were talking about until that scene, and all of a sudden it hit me. I was like, oh my gosh, I've seen this. I've seen this movie. They played this at the school when I was a kid, when I was probably 3rd or 4th grade or something like that. And then again,
that is amazing. High. That is amazing that you did actually see whatever short movie that was in school. I can't believe they showed that in class.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, I remember the weird honking sounds and other stuff going on. Like, all of it was just, I just kept thinking, I was like, wow, something about this seems familiar. And yeah, once you started describing that paint racing around the car, I was like, oh my gosh. It's like, man, that was a throwback for me. And I mean, it just goes to show like how much fun the show is. I mean, because you hear Kurt Russell, everybody's like, oh, I've got my favorite movies, Stargate or whatever, those are coming. But to hear the stuff he did and like the stuff I've forgotten about is hilarious.
Some of his early stuff, whether that's Dad, can I borrow the car? This PSA that we were talking about driver's ed, yes. Sort of, which is buck wild, mm-hmm. Or like World's Strongest Man, the Disney thing that he did. Some of it is just so out there and so fun to watch. There's mm-hmm. a lot of not great stuff early on, but at least with the not great stuff, we could sort of make fun of it, mm-hmm. and have fun still doing that. But yeah, some of especially these weird Disney ones, that these off-kilter Disney movies that he did as a kid, they're so fun to watch.
Yeah. Yeah, they really are. And I still remember I've got just little vague memories in my mind of being at a babysitter's house, and they had like early satellite, and they picked up The World's Strongest Man one night, and we were watching that. And I remember the babysitter's dad or grandpa, somebody, that scene where the kid's arms stretched out, and this old guy at the house, he just lost it. And of course that made the rest of us lose it too. We were like, okay, yeah, that was funny. Look at that. He's, oh my gosh, just some of that stuff. And I haven't seen it since then, probably. So it's like so much of what you guys are talking about. I'm like, gosh, I got to go back and watch some of this. So you're probably what, another couple of episodes away from getting into some of his more modern stuff that he's more well known for, huh?
Yeah, we're in the middle of the 70s right now. I think we just hit like 75, 76 around that time when he was doing a lot of TV movies. He moved from his Disney movies, and right before he hit big with like The Thing and Escape from New York, he did like these TV movies essentially, which are fine. But yeah, once we get to like the 80s, I'm looking forward to Escape from New York, The Thing, Used Cars. I don't know if you ever saw that one. Absolutely hysterical.
That's been a while. So yeah, I guess you'll have the Elvis movie will be coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, that's coming. I'm looking forward to that one. I haven't watched that one yet, but I have heard, because that's the start of his work with John Carpenter. So I've heard it was actually a really good Elvis biography.
I remember when that premiered, and that being, because this was back in the days of event television. So you're sitting around, you getting your family together because you saw on the TV guide. Yep, it's been advertised. Hey, Thursday night, 7:00, sit down for Kurt Russell and the Elvis movie, and so we're all getting together, and the grandparents are coming over because we've got cable and they don't, or whatever. And yeah, we're all gathered around to watch the Elvis movie. I remember that. And I remember I can still see like bits and pieces of it, but that's another one that I haven't seen in decades. But I remember that like really kicked him off as far as getting into, well, like you said, that was his first foray with John Carpenter, and then that partnership's legendary at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I, as much as I love doing the show and the podcast and having fun with hanging out with my friends and just being creative and everything, really, I'm just hoping Kurt Russell hears it and comes on. That's all I really want out of this, is to meet Kurt Russell.
Oh, absolutely. And I tell you what, as a fan of the show, I'm always looking for angles that where if I can reach out to somebody, that's how I got Lou Diamond Phillips on the show. Was I just happened to tag one of his posts right after he posted it, and then about his book, and then he answered back, and then going from there. And I'm just waiting for one of these days when somebody online, because I know Kurt doesn't have a social media presence, but somebody will have a social media presence who knows him, who's going to be like, dude, you got to check this out.
I feel it would be right up his alley too.
I think so. I could see him getting a kick out of it. Well, so with this, the podcast, you're on your second one now, and you did some crossovers with other shows throughout. And again, everybody, we were talking about the network that we used to be on, and I'm just going to throw out there real fast too. Armand Rosamilia, if you're listening, I got Ryan Miller, not you. So, but it's like you said, there's a whole lot of creativity that goes into this. It's not just sitting down and talking with your friends, which a lot of podcasts say, oh, that's just what we're doing. But there's much more to it. And as evident with your book that just came out or is about to come out, there is, this is like really tapping into that creativity that you've got. And I'm interested to see, at what point have you been, do you remember when it hit you that you're like, I'm going to write this story?
I don't know where quite to start with that question. So I joke that this story, that the Vein Curse, for my debut comedy novel that's coming out in July, I should know that, right? I should know that. I think it's July 13th.
It's available for pre-order now, so that's all that matters.
Exactly. So I joke though that so the Vane Curse, brief synopsis. It's a detective is hired to find out the origins of Carly Simon's song "You're So Vain." I mean, there's a built-in mystery there, because for years people have been trying to figure out who this song is actually about. And Carly Simon, she's kind of tight-lipped about it in real life. She's dropped hints here and there, but I thought it would be um, a good mystery novel, essentially. Um, but I always joke because the idea behind it. So in the book, and you'll hear it in the chapter that I'll read later on. In the book, he's hired by this man who's being stalked by the song. He hears the song every day for a year, and then the detective reveals that he's being stalked by the song every day for a year or so. That happened to me 10 years or so ago. I was working at Dunkin' Donuts, and just at the time, for whatever reason, it was every single day for like a year and a half. You're So Vain would play either in Dunkin' Donuts or like outside. Like I would go into a diner with friends or family, and that song would start as soon as I walked in. It just happened every single day that I was being stalked by the song. So it's been percolating for a while, this idea that I had. And then I got really lucky with doing these podcasts and everything. A few years into doing Your New Opinion, we got picked up by Project Entertainment Network, which was absolutely great. So my friend Nick knows Frank Edler. Like he was friendly with Frank, who did the Bazong podcast also
that
on the
somehow
same
makes
day.
sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was talking to Frank one day at some kind of book signing, and Frank, to his credit, who listened to the show Your New Opinion and loved it and pitched it to Armand, who brought us on to the network. So around that time, I must have been like 2016, 2017, 2018, somewhere around there. I started listening to all these shows that I didn't know were available. Frank had Bazong, Armand had his couple of shows, and then you came on as well, sample chapter podcast. And I've been, I went to school for writing. I was an English major with writing and literature. I've been writing for as long as I can remember. So I feel really lucky that doing these podcasts and being creative in that way led to me meeting and listening to all these great authors and being introduced to all kinds of different genres that I didn't know existed. Hearing finding all these books and reading all these books from these authors and everybody that they interviewed. And it got me wanting to get back into writing a lot more. So throughout the years, I had a couple hits and misses, whether it was, trying short stories, or I wrote a shorter novel right before this one that, like everybody says, an author's first work is kind of terrible. And that one was. And then right around 2019, I think towards the end of 2019, I started writing this just off the cusp. I was trying to think of a plot. And I thought this would lead into something crazy and funny. And luckily for me, I just kept going with it. And I'm very proud of the Vane Curse, the book that's coming out. I know it's not going to be for everybody because it is every other line is a joke in there. I feel like I wasted all of my jokes on this book, but I'm very I don't know the right word. I'm very happy that I had these opportunities that I had with meeting you and Armand, Chuck Buda, Tim Meyer, Frank Adler, all these authors that were part of this network of podcasters. And it just led into, me developing these relationships and me getting to hear advice from them and just using that as a way to write my book, essentially.
Yeah. And I can say you deservedly so. You should be proud of it because it is a lot of fun. I I was just talking to somebody the other day and telling about that I was reading a book from a friend of mine, getting to pre-read it before it comes out, and they were like, "Oh, what's it about?" And I was like, well, I was like, I gave them the gist of it, and they were like, "Was it any good?" I said, "Well, it's like if Naked Gun and Pet Detective got mashed together, you'd have this book." And like, so they're sold on it now.
Well, thank you for.
So,
I think that's a great description of it. Because I like the Naked Gun movies,
yeah.
Airplane. I love those that style of comedy.
Hmm.
Comedy has always been like the biggest thing for me. I absolutely love all forms of comedy, but there's something about like those jokes in Naked Gun
Yeah.
that just work. They're so stupid, but they just work.
Yeah, and the lines are just dry. It's like they're just saying it so matter of factly. It's like, what, beaver? What? I mean, just you, you're just hard to keep up. And I mean, I don't know how many times at the theaters I'm drying my eyes only to just crack up again. And yeah, I'm having a blast with the book as well. And I've reached that midway point where it's like, oh my gosh, like this is outstanding. I can't. I'm at that point now where it's like every time I pick it up, I don't want to put it down, but it's like, okay, it's getting late, or I'm late to work, or whatever. So it's a lot of fun, man. You've done some great work with it.
That is one of the nicest things anybody could have said about my book. That's absolutely great to hear. Because I'm very happy with the jokes that I put into it. I put in a lot of jokes and comedy, but I did also try to have it be a good mystery as well, and I
Mhm.
tried to have it well written and everything, and for the plot to make sense. So I'm hoping that's coming across as you're reading it. But even if it's just the jokes, I'm happy.
So now, did you intend all along for it to be comedic, or was it like, were you just going for the mystery because of your inspiration with the song, or did it
Um,
just kind of, yeah,
I
or just come out naturally?
I think I always intended it to. Think I always intended it to be comedic in
Mhm.
nature because it is such a silly idea. Detective being hired to find out the origins of this song. That's kind of a out there idea. So I always intended it to be. Um, Between that, you know, kind of out there idea and just the fact that I wanted to play off the tropes of like noir and hard boiled comedy, or not comedy, hard boiled detective novels and movies and everything, um, which, by the way, are hysterical. Some of these actual serious hard boiled novels, like Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett, those early novels,
Mhm.
their lines are so funny and like intended to be, but while also working with the seriousness of the plots.
Mhm.
Um, so I wanted to sort of play off of that as well as I was writing the novel. So I hope that came across using all these different tropes of hard boiled and noir detective ideas.
Yeah, and for me, that's something that strikes a nerve with me, is like, you get something that, here's a moment of seriousness, here's something that's, daring or whatever, all this tension that's going on. For the love of God, tell a joke.
Exactly.
And break it up a little bit, ease the tension, just let the reader just kind of like, oh my gosh, all right.
Yeah.
And
What's the word pathos or bathos, whatever it is? Uh,
yeah, the pathos.
yeah, you could make something very serious and dramatic and everything, but I like lightening that up with a joke as well.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And I think, well, he's not very PC these days. Haven't seen him in a while, but oh man, and of course his name just left me. But the old Buffy director,
Oh, yeah,
Joss
Joss
Whedon.
Whedon. Yeah,
Yeah, that was something I remember him saying a long time ago, was, put your characters in the most dangerous spot, they're in the biggest danger in the scariest scene, or the most serious of scenes going on, and then tell a joke. And
yeah.
I like that. That works for me. And I mean, I think it worked really well, like throughout Serenity and Firefly especially.
I mean, Firefly, one of my favorite shows of all time. Say what you will about how much of a scumbag I guess he is now, Joss Whedon,
Mhm.
but Firefly and Serenity, I could rewatch those all the time because they are so great at setting up phenomenal, serious plots while also having the the humor aspect to it, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and I guess, he really set the tone with Avengers
Yeah, yeah.
for what they were going to do going forward.
The entire Marvel universe is nothing but, one-liners now, which it works. I love the Marvel universe. I'm
Yeah.
not, you know, putting that down at all. I like those one-liners when they work, they hit hard.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. When you were writing this, like at what point did you realize, okay, this is the one. This is the story. I'm going to see it through, and you feel like I'm going to finish this story because I'm the same way. I had a filing cabinet full of stories that I never finished. I'd get 3 to 6 chapters or so in, and then I thought I set it aside, and and that happens with authors everywhere, and you had it yourself, and so what was it you think that stood out about this one, or what was that point when you realized, yep, I'm going to finish this one?
It was early on. It was very early on. Within the first 2 to 3 chapters, I realized that I would finish it because I was cracking myself up. And I know that sounds funny. I did what every author says not to do, and that's I was writing for myself with this one. I feel like I'm my own target audience with the Vain Curse. It's very music heavy and music inspired. I absolutely love music. I'm a musician. I play guitar and bass and keyboards and everything. I'm constantly listening to music. So that aspect already had pulled me in. And then after I had written, it must have been like I said, 2 to 3 chapters, I realized that when I was reading back, I was making myself laugh for it. Um, so it was really early on that I realized I'm just going to see this through, even if it doesn't go anywhere, if it doesn't get picked up, if nobody else likes it, at least I like it. And so it was, yeah. After a couple chapters, I actually thinking about it now, I almost had a change of mind too. I really enjoyed those first, like writing those first 3 or 4 chapters. And then at the same time, I was reading a bunch of, either detective novels like the Raymond Chandler stuff. I love Raymond Chandler, Big Sleep and Little Sister and all those books and movies and everything. So I was reading a lot of that, but I wanted to also branch out and see if there was any, either sci-fi detective novels or comedy detective novels out there. So I came across John Swartzwelder, the author. He was also a writer on The Simpsons. He's known for being like the biggest writer. Like he wrote the most episodes of The Simpsons. And after he left that, he has these novels, comedy detective novels that are so far out there. So I started reading his first one called The Time Machine Did It, and I almost lost faith in my novel because it was close. They're very similar with the comedy aspects of it. So I started reading that one, and I'm like, oh my gosh, am I just doing the same thing as John Swartzwelder is doing? I don't want to do that. And then I finished his, and his is very much like way out of left field. It doesn't care about the plot at all. It's all about the jokes for him, and they are absolutely hysterical novels, but they're not really detective novels. So once I realized that I'm like, okay, I could continue going. I'll make myself happy by finishing this book and seeing where it could lead me.
Awesome. That's great, man. And I agree. I think, because that's what worked for me is writing for myself. I think I worried too much about what does this sound like? How does this, is this, going to work? Is this story going to do something? And once I just disconnected that part of my brain and just stuck with the story and let it flow from me, and just write stuff that I enjoy, I found this freedom, and I was able to let the story come. And I'm having trouble with that with my next Bandit book, because it just kind of I keep trying. Well, I think it's because I'm trying to match up stuff from the first book and set up stuff for book 3, and that's just kind of a hang up for me. But like the first book and my previous books before then, I was just having fun and going in and writing the stuff that I want to write. And it just, you reach that flow state, and it's so much fun when you hit that.
I mean, that makes sense to me because I've read 9 Mile Bridge, which was absolutely phenomenal. I could tell reading that you had fun writing it, you know.
Oh, thanks, man.
Um,
Checks in the mail.
So, and sometimes I guess, you know, like I said, this is my debut novel, so you know, don't listen to me, listeners. I'm a nobody really right now. But sometimes that's what you got to do, is you just got to write for yourself. You have to have fun while writing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, after this, you know, depending on how the Vein Curse does moving forward, maybe I would like to go into maybe a little less comedy or something, and maybe try writing to an actual demographic audience and everything. But right now, I'm just having fun with something that I'm enjoying on a personal level, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with just doing something like, if you decide your next book is going to be something more serious or completely do a 180, I don't think there's anything wrong with that anymore, because you know, people frown on that. They say that you frown on that, but I mean, you look at Stephen King, you know, he created an alter ego so he could write the other stuff that he wanted to write when his publishers wouldn't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, it just, nowadays it's just commonplace, I think, for people to just put out like, okay, yeah, this week it's going to be horror, next week it's going to be a western, the next week after that, you know, who knows, or well, you know, the next year, maybe not the next week. But yeah, you just have fun with it, and then because people, once they recognize your voice, when your voice is coming through, that hopefully is going to be what people want to pick up. And I think that's why people pick up a King book, because they know what they're going to get.
Right. He could write in any style and it's still going to sound like him.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. I think you're onto something as well. That as readers, a lot of us read things all over the place. You know, I don't strictly read just comedy books, or I don't strictly read just detective novels. I love westerns. I love literary novels. I love reading history stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to take that into account as a writer moving forward as well. I would love to write something. I would love to write a Western. I'm really into Westerns as well. I would love to do that. I would love to write something historical based. You know, I don't think it's that big of an issue, because everybody has different facets to their lives. You know, we're all human beings. We all have these different ideas running through us. As like you said, as long as your voice comes out, I think that's the important thing. I think readers can get on board with that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, so where can people find and follow you, man?
So, I am on Twitter at R Morgan Miller. I am also on Instagram. R Morgan Miller. Instagram and Twitter both the same. I'm starting to build up a website right now, ryanmorganmiller.com. Right now, it's just a simple sort of landing page with an about the book and about me section. But I would like to develop that. Maybe have, you know, a running journal or blog or something.
Mm-hmm.
I just got to figure out how to actually develop a website. That was way harder than I thought it would be when I went into it.
Yeah.
So it's up. You can follow me there, Ryan Morgan Miller. Hopefully, more of that will come in the next couple months as my book launch approaches.
Fantastic. Do you have your Amazon page created?
Yes, I do. I have that and a Goodreads
Perfect.
page created as well. So you could, you know,
Perfect.
the Amazon author page at Ryan Morgan Miller, and same with Goodreads.
Great. Okay. Yeah. And what I can do is put those on there too, because even if you don't have a website, as long as you have claimed your author page on those sites, then people can be notified whenever you have a new book. So that's always important.
Oh, that's good to know, because I'm like, you know, I'm brand new to that. So, but yeah, once I heard from my publisher, Black Rose Writing, that the book was up for pre-order on Amazon, I'm like, okay, I know the author page is there. Let me go do that.
There you go. All right. Well, again, man, this has been a blast. There's just so much more. I know we could have gone on for another hour or two about Kurt Russell, and then diving into the writing stuff. We could have just been sitting back all night talking about that. But I gotta move on. And everybody, this is a new portion of the show. We're going to be wrapping it up here for this week. But make sure you stay tuned next week when you hear from The Vain Curse, a hard-boiled comedy novel.
Well, Jason, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
It has been my pleasure. And everybody, we'll see you next week.